It was an amazing film, and it's always a really, really good thing that they managed to turn a very good book into a very good film. I don't necessarily agree with it being categorized as a comedy, but there are funny parts in it, obviously. So, let me just very quickly show you what we did on The Martian. So this was just a small cross-section of the work that we did. It was, I think, 2.5 minutes long, but I quickly edited it on the plane because I'd rather show you some stuff than just playing videos. So we're a Cinema 4D studio, we can say that. And as you might know, Cinema 4D used to be the tool of small studios, individuals, freelancers, and although it was used at very, very big companies, it was quite rare to have a company with a pure Cinema 4D pipeline. And we're really, really proud that we started to build that into a proper pipeline. And that's an integral part of how Territory as a studio started to develop. So, we were quite small in the beginning. 3 guys just decided to come up with this great idea of creating a studio, and lots of freelancers started to freelance, and they become permanent, and everybody used Cinema 4D because that's a very easy to use and very powerful tool. But nowadays, when everything is more demanding and the productions are getting bigger, deadlines are getting tighter, it still is a good tool, and it can fit into a mixed pipeline. So when we work with outside companies and they give us models or just give us a huge Alembic cache, we can just put it into the pipeline and render it. With that being said, I just want to show you a few things that we did on The Martian. The first I'm going to talk about in detail is the so-called satellite set. If this is live or being recorded, or if you're just looking at me, I'm not being utterly disappointed and sad by looking down like that. There's a screen where I can see what's behind me, so it's not me being like moody or anything like that doing this. So the satellite set. This was a very, very interesting thing to do because that wasn't in the original brief that we received. It was about screens, and we did quite a few screens on science fiction films and superhero films like Avengers, Age of Ultron and Guardians of the Galaxy, and most of those involved quite a bit of freedom in terms of like coming up with something that shows a space alien being dissected. I mean, there are not really good footage. There's not good footage of that online, so you have to come up with something and show it in an exciting and slightly exaggerated way. But with The Martian, Ridley Scott's idea and the idea that Arthur Max, the production designer, and Felicity Hickson, the art director, wanted to really maintain throughout the whole film was that it needs to be rooted in reality. So to achieve that, we consulted with guys from NASA and proper scientists, because it's very easy to do a screen with lots of numbers running through it, but if it doesn't make any sense in the context of a film that's rooted in reality, that's not really good. So we consulted with them how to show trajectories and different oxygen values and all sorts of stuff. So the first one, as I mentioned, this wasn't in the original brief, and because I read the book before this came on board, I was super excited about trying to do something that shows those satellite moments when they're able to spot that Mark Watney is alive. And I started to play with that at home, just sort of like did a few renders, just sort of like had an idea how the hab would look like, and just combed them roughly together and showed them at the meeting. And they said, yeah, this looks quite good, can you do it for real? And that's how we got this part of the film as well. Let me just show you. This was one of the first renders that you see here, and obviously this started before we got information on where the location is going to be. So this was I think that wasn't the first one, it's probably the second or third iteration of the hab, and this was just a proof of concept. And this was all done in Cinema 4D. We received the hab, the actual model, from, I don't know, one of the other companies, probably MPC, or I don't know who worked on it, probably DNAG. And it was a very detailed model, but we sort of like made it a little bit lighter to be able to do very quick renders, because one of the important things when you work on films and work in this whole incredibly exciting but very overwhelming world of film visual effects is time. Everything needs to be done immediately, everything needs to be done in an hour, everything needs to be ready by tomorrow. So the luxury of being able to iterate is really, really important. It's like, you do a render, it takes 10 minutes to render, it looks amazing, it makes the director happy, then we are good. But if it takes 6 hours and he's coming back and, I don't really like what you did there, that's already a day lost, and a day in terms of film is quite a lot. So that was the first iteration, and this shows another angle of how this set looked like. And the important things here is actually we wanted to use a plugin called, you probably know that, called Damn Earth, and it's quite exciting because it can, you can download topology for everywhere in the world, as well as some elevation data, street maps, buildings, and I don't want to follow up the previous presentation, but it does quite similar things, and it's really, really good. But the problem with that is some parts of the world are not really well documented. So when you want to do this part of the world, which is in Jordan, which is probably one of the favorite locations of Ridley Scott, simply the data wasn't there, and it was quite sort of like, I think it was like a probably 90-meter resolution, so 1 pixel was 90 meters or something like that. And that's obviously not really good when you have to get this close to the hab. So what we did is we just gathered as much reference as we could from Google Maps, from tourist photographs, stuff like that, and we just hand modeled it, and we did put sort of like a procedural displacement map on top, and we just, fingers crossed, it was good. Everyone liked it. So what we did here is we played with lots of lighting scenarios. We figured out, which is again a very good thing in Cinema 4D, you can figure out where the sun is shining from. So we were able to replicate the possible lighting setups on set. So we just wanted to make sure that if they show the hab in the film and it's lit from the right side, the hab on the screen is not lit from the other side, because that's a bit of a problem. So with that being said, let me just show you a few things in Cinema 4D. Are you able to see? No. Okay, cool. We're in. Now you see my very neat and tidy desktop. Can you hear me well? Is everyone all right? Cool. So this is the set. This is what we did in Cinema 4D, and I don't have my webcam here, so I'm just sort of like smash around on the touchpad. So this is the model that we got, and these are the other bits and bobs, the famous sort of like solar panels that Mark Watney cleaned, and that sort of like told everybody that he's still alive. So you see the actual sort of like ground is just a texture map that we painted, and this thing here looks quite mad. So this is how this very rough geometry looks like. And we just mapped something on top of it, and that created that sort of like procedural landscape. We lost one. Bye. Yeah, I'll try to render it very, very quickly. The good thing about it is, because the displacement is created sort of like live or procedurally, we were able to try out a few different versions very, very quickly. And we found one that pleased the director and the production designer, so we stick with that. Excuse me for my render times, this is just a laptop and it's not being really, really fast, but with that being said, this is still a good thing to be able to achieve. Because if you're on set, which happens sometimes when we do these kind of films, we have to go on set, take a laptop. The director says, "Yeah, you know, what if you rotate that mountain?" And you have to be able to do it very, very quickly. And because they are very, very busy people, you can't sort of like stand around and wait for 10 minutes for a render. So if you just do a quick one like this, you're immediately able to show that this is how it's going to look like, and you can do a bit of comping on top. And as you see here, this is, I mean, like, the reason why I showed this to you and most of the stuff that I'm going to show you today, I would say it's fairly simple. It's not super, super difficult to achieve. And this pretty much shows that with the right tools, which allow you to experiment and come up with the real creative stuff, you are able to do, you know, stuff that's being used in films, and you don't have to use very, very difficult stuff to create extraordinary things. So different lighting setups, you know, these were the different versions of the sun, and this is pretty much how we did this landscape. If you're happy with that, I would like to do a bit of a Q&A at the end, if that's okay with everybody. So if you have questions, just remember them, and I will very happily answer them at the end. I think we're going to go back to this. So you are not able to see my notes. Neither do I. I can't see my notes, so I'm just sort of like making this up as we go. So let me just very quickly show you if this works now. Go back one. Right. This shows an actual screen from the set that was used in the hab when they were watching the big storm coming. And you see that little thing that I showed you. And this whole thing, this massive storm, is turbulence FD simulation on top. And we did, I think, at least 3 or 4 versions of that. One was extremely massive, one was a little bit smaller. We mixed them and did a few versions. But again, this shows pretty much that with one simple setup, you are able to do quite a few things, which is an ongoing theme on films. If you create an asset, you should be able to reuse it in some clever ways, because we ended up, I think, doing 600, I don't want to say absolutely exaggerated number, but 600 or 900 screens for The Martian. And obviously you're not able to do 600 bespoke designs. So you have to reuse stuff. And the way we work usually is we create a library of things, So little widgets, graphics, bits and bobs, animated stuff. And we just, I don't know, we have 200 of that or 300. And when we are assembling screens, we are very quickly able to sort of like rearrange them. And usually what we need to do on set is create a hero 3D asset that's in the middle. And that's the one that takes a bit of time to sort of like come up with and make sure that it looks good. So the next one, the weather systems, is a really good example of reusing stuff that we did. I think this is an animation. That shows one of the screens from the hab. And I will show you how we did it in Cinema 4D. Brilliant. So, weather 5C. This looks very exciting. Because this is very exciting, this is just a highly subdivided plane. And with the displacer thrown in. And if you just do that, it creates some undulations. And if you use undulations and sketch and tune together, you immediately created something that resembles a weather system. Topological maps. It's basically up to you what you call this, and you can sort of like very quickly tweak the lines. I don't know how many of you use sketch and tune. Do you guys use it? Right. So the contour function is one of the best things since sliced bread, because you can sort of like animate these values. You know, this is a variation of 1 centimeter. If I sort of like raise it a bit, yeah, it's not really visible, but you get the idea. It sort of like starts to shuffle the lines around, and you can animate all these values. So if it's not enough that it changes on every frame with the displacement, you can animate the lines. You can animate the color of the lines, and you can change the displacer, the noise that you use in the displacement. You can use video, you can use a still texture, whatever. So that was a very quick one. This is just, yeah, if we need a weather screen, you have 5 minutes to do that, boom, we're in. The second one was a little bit more, I wouldn't say difficult, but it needed a bit more thinking. And this is a setup that's X-particles-based setup, and we used turbulence FD on top of that. So the way it works is, as you see, there's a couple of emitters and turbulences, rotators, whatever. And as far as I can remember, it uses splines. No, it uses a sphere, which must be in here, yeah. That's sort of like distorted. Just moves around like this. I might be able to show it. Maybe not. And that's the one that starts to emit the particles. You see? And there are some splines thrown in as well, which emit particles as well. And you have that very weird thing going on there. And because you have particles, you can sort of like use them to drive turbulence FD simulation, which you see down there, which I'm seeing here as well, but I just like to make sure that it's visible. And this is a very good base to do different things. So first of all, you can render it with hair. You have something like this. It renders in literally no time, which is very good from a film perspective. You can render the X particles themselves. That's another look. Obviously, in comp, you can combine this. So again, something interesting going on, and you can render the turbulence FD version of the whole thing, which looks like this. So you have, from one asset, you have at least 3 versions that you can mix. You can change the colors. You can use them in any way you want. You can change the base simulation of the lines. So yeah, this is just another example of how flexible this whole thing is. Cool? Are you still with me? I hope it's... I mean, like in Martian, it's not the latest film out there, but it's still, you know, quite exciting, at least for us. So the next thing is going to be what I'm going to talk about is the very famous potatoes and soil. When I started to do the presentation, I sort of like estimated that around this time someone will ask what's going on with these subtitles, because this says roots, but the roots, and I had this idea that I'm just going to throw in music-related subtitles. So this is a Sepultura song back from the late 90s. I lost everyone there, I'm pretty sure. All right, cool. So potatoes. I mean, like, you know, Mark Watney and potatoes, they are really going well together. And he's really famous for being a botanist on Mars, which seemed impossible, but he was able to do, you know, cultivate potatoes. And one of the things that he had to do was to monitor the soil. And we did this little animation, which, again, you know, different little widgets that Marty Romances, the art director at Territory, designed. He shuffled a few things around, and he sort of like asked me to do a 3D asset that shows a cross-section of the soil in an interesting way. And this was what I came up with. I'm pretty sure there are people out there who can do more exciting versions of soil cross-sections, but hey, this is who I am. So with that being said, let's go to Cinema 4D and let's see how that was done. Brilliant. For some reason, I expected some soundtrack to play underneath my presentation, but it's not going to happen today. Martian soil. Looks a bit different, but you get the idea. The main idea was that, again, used X particles to emit like particles, just shuffle them around, rotate them around, and we used sort of like geometry to create those bits and bobs, which are down here, I think. Generator. This is the object. So it's a little subdivided something that we hope that represents some sand grains or whatever they are on Mars. And we did different tests with colors, and this was like, yeah, this looks like soil because of the color, but the production design said that we need something more exciting, so that's why we changed it into that bluish, pinkish looking thing. But you get the idea. I mean, like, you know, this is not super difficult to do, but with nice shadows and stuff like that, it's immediately something that's a little bit more than just, you know, a graphic with a cross-section of the Martian soil. Let's go to the potato thingy. This is a hand-modeled potato. That's the pinnacle of my 3D modeling career. I mean, like, this is pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, I think that was probably done in ZBrush. I mean, like, you know, yeah, this is just a nice piece of potato, and we started to talk about roots and how potatoes look like, and because you don't really see the roots when you buy potatoes, you just see this, but when you show that on a screen, no one will get that it's in the soil, and you know, it needs to have different states of development and stuff like that. So again, very quick option. How can we iterate through a few versions of potatoes? X particles, and that's what we did. Boom. That's hero potato A, and if you just, you know, change the seed, I cached it before that. But you get the idea. You can do a few different versions of the potato. You can convert this into a spline and immediately have like an army of potatoes, different versions of that, which you can use in the second thing that I will show you, which is a potato in the soil. You never thought that it's going to get this, yeah? FMX, and someone is talking about soil and potatoes. 21st century. So this is how it looked like. The idea was, again, that where's the camera? You have that beautiful made model potato. You have the procedural sort of like roots. You have that nice little thing modeled on top. Again, this is like very high quality stuff. And the cube and lots of particles. And what you can do is, create something that's a rough volumetric representation of the Martian soil with the potato in it. Again, very easy to create different versions, very easy to go through colors, shapes, sizes, whatever. So it's really cool. Again, Cinema 4D allows you to come up with solutions that you can use, which is a really good thing to do. Brilliant. Let's go back to the presentation. Soil. And Rose, Pathfinders, and the rest. And this is my little tribute to Prince down there, Little Red Corvette. I thought that's got something to do with the Rover, driving, something like that. Obviously, wasn't as I thought it would be a little bit more. All right. Anyway, I have to rethink my strategies next time. So what we did here, Mark Watney drove a rover through Mars, and one of the things, I'll talk about it later. First is going to be the Pathfinder. Do you remember the scene when he finds the Pathfinder? Sort of like aligns the camera and uses a tray and his handwriting to tell the people that he's able to see them or receive the, radio stuff or whatever. That was the very first iteration of that. So I think we got a photograph of the tray, and it was just using some sort of a photo reference from Jordan and just quickly mocking this up, and this was literally 5 minutes with my handwriting there. And we just sent it back to the production. Production said, yeah, this is very promising, but can you do something else? Of course we can. This was the second iteration, still my handwriting, a little bit more, rocks in the background. That little aluminium rod down there is a little bit more evolved. But I personally had this idea that the Pathfinder, after all these years on Mars, the camera or the lens cover would be a little bit beaten up. But obviously that wasn't too well received, so here's a version that a little bit more, clear, still my handwriting. And this is the fourth version with one of my colleagues' handwriting. Lee, he's the one who usually designs fonts for us. There was a hidden way of telling me that my handwriting is shit, but I don't think he's so much better than mine, but they still went with it. Again, you see this distressed lens kind of thing was still going on, which obviously was my choice, but they were really not having it. And this is how the final stuff looked like. And the handwriting in this case is Matt Damon's, so I think that's slightly better than mine. But what we did here is what I'm going to show you next. No? Are you guys doing these little noises when you are switching windows? I found myself doing this that kind of thing all the time. It's probably this one. Yes. So what we did there is, I don't know how you are with this, but one of the things that I had to learn throughout all the years is when I got the brief to model something is, that's one of the best things in life to be able to, just do the research, find the last little nuts and bolt that's crammed into it and model the whole thing. And you're sitting there and you are really proud, spend 3 days or a week modeling everything, and you're really proud that you did something that's not going to be shown on the screen. But this is one of the things that I had to learn, that you just model what you need to model, what's going to be on camera. So this Pathfinder model is a little bit grim, especially around the middle. But I still put a bit of effort to do things, and I went overboard and I designed those deflated cushions and balloons and whatever they were, which obviously were not required, but I did them anyway, hoping that, you know, Ridley Scott is going to say, yeah, those are the best deflated landing cushions I've seen in my life. I want that in my film. But yeah, that wasn't what happened. Again, you see the soil was modeled and sculpted, and we got some texture reference and photographic backgrounds from the production, because by the time we got to this point, they were already shooting stuff in Jordan. Before that, no one really saw what's going to happen there. But this time we got, like, you know, the texture for the floor, the texture for the background, and we just applied those on top and just very quickly rendered it. We used, obviously, the no camera, the yes camera. They all look the same. Yeah, probably it wasn't this. I just put yes, no, and camera. All right, let it go. So yeah, this pretty much shows that this is just a pure modeling task with some nice lighting and applying textures. And when you do that, it still can be in the film. Yeah. Next one, the Rover. This is pretty much similar to the first HAB satellite stuff that we did. We were a little bit closer in the beginning because, you know, the Rover model looked really good, and I did some smoke simulations to show the dust coming from the wheels and stuff like that. But Ridley was really keen on showing the scale, so we moved out a bit and we just enlarged everything. So if there was a crater that was about 200 meters wide, we had to make it like 2 kilometers wide, so everything was much smaller. So that lovely smoke detail that I very proudly constructed was basically not seen at the end, but we know it's there, especially from now on. So when you watch it, just keep an eye on that. Again, this shows how versatile Cinema 4D is. Another request, can you do a few screens for the Rover, getting closer to the HAB? Sketch and tune, basic models, very choppy animation, just to show that, you know, this is sort of like futuristic technology, but still down to earth. So nothing fancy, basically something that looks like a late 80s computer game. So really love that. Just a quick one again. This is animation test that we did. One of the key scenes is when the MAV starts to tilt, and they wanted to show it on a screen, which was meant to be controlled. So we did a few versions of the tilting process, and on set, the guys were able to control it. So when the actors were actually doing that, they sort of like did stuff, and it really showed how it worked. But we got this model, and we had to make sure that the actual pistons and the hydraulics sort of like worked in a more or less realistic way. It was quite convenient when, from these 4-legged versions, they changed the MAV to be a 3-legged design at the very end. So this is how it works in films. Always changes happen, so you have to be aware of that. This one, again, very quick one, just a sort of like a massive docking spaceship sequence, nothing really fancy. But again, that shows the way that we use these Hero 3D assets and the other 2D stuff around it as well. Boom. So that was basically The Martian. And the next thing I'm going to talk about is the thing that can't be shown. So this is where we